Well, I've got Jeff Lutz here tonight, and I have been just waiting and waiting and waiting for this moment because Jeff has the inside scoop on a couple of parts of the things that I want to talk about tonight, but also because, I was really curious about your take, Jeff, on some of the things that happened. I don't know, a minor event, some inauguration or something in the first couple of days of the of the Trump administration. But actually, I'm going to circle back to that last because I cannot not start with the rumored production of Optimus in the fourth quarter, maybe somewhere in the fourth quarter. This rumor of 600 Optimi per week. So it's only a rumor, although it's starting to get more legs. Every single day we see more and more commentary that there's chatter in the supply lines that they've ordered parts for 600 a week and that will continue to ramp up after that from that level. So I mean, it's starting to sound more and more like it's real. So my question is, but you may have other things you want to add to flavor what I just said. But my real question is, if that's true, well, assuming it's true, where does that mean that Tesla is in their plan in order to be able to start placing those orders?
Yeah. And I talked a bit about this as soon as Elon had that conversation on it where he revealed that his approach to building it. Yeah, I think it's totally real. And what I think is happening is this year they've largely locked the design of what Optimus is, the production, like call it version 1 production version of Optimus. And it's not uncommon in the design and manufacturing world, especially when you're building something new like this, to build anywhere between 10 and 20,000 devices during the development stage. And many of those devices are at the later stages of the development stage, which a lot of it could be in the pilot production type stage, even though you haven't done official start of production. Those units are very production worthy or capable. And I think that's what they're doing because these things are going to be on a short leash. They're going to be in Tesla factories. They're not going to have to worry about any kind of, issues or kind of public, whatever. These things are going to be internal. So these things could be part of the development process, which to me is totally reasonable. And then they could have some sort of formal, maybe it is the fourth quarter where they kind of cross over into a more, weekly cadence of production and where they start stepping the volumes up. So getting into, a couple thousand a month by the end of the year doesn't sound out of this world to me at all. And it aligns to me what Elon talked about 5 to 10,000 this year. So, all this, makes a lot of sense. I know there's people, I saw an account saying that he doesn't think they'll build 600 this year. And I mean, they will, they absolutely will. And again, it's part of the development process. So some of this is kind of, just like the step-by-step process for product development into manufacturing. But I think what the viewer should take away is they are very close on Optimus, and so close that they're getting into those latter stages of development, and many of those will be production worthy into the many thousands. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's what this year is for. And if it's proven, they'll just keep those component and ratchet those component orders up and continue to build more manufacturing lines. The other thing you do at the end of your development stage, typically this is Silicon Valley product development, this is mainstream product development, is you build a production line in the second to the last stage of development and you commission it. And it doesn't mean you're at start of production, but you have a line that's built with all your production processes, all your production materials that's meant to run at rate. And what you do is you use that line for those last those last two stages in the product development where you're doing larger builds, where you're checking out the entire inbound supply chain and their production worthiness. You're checking out your production process. you're making any final tweaks, and then you go into the final pilot stage before production. So totally, I that could be one or two Optimus lines that are built and made available for that stage.
Okay, so let me see if I can feed this back because again, in my factory experience, we didn't have pilot lines or anything else. It was one
Yeah,
machine. When the machine's ready
yeah.
to go, you start making product. So you're saying that there would be probably between now and then two production lines roughly set up, let's say two production. But these production lines are not like we're going to make a production line, then we're going to tear it down and we're going to build the real production line. These are not, they're pilot production lines, but it's really
Yeah. So usually the first two lines. Yeah.
okay. So it's really the finished thing. All right. So I mean, we know they hired people a year ago to start designing and putting this production line together. So it at this point they may have the physical line created. Is that what you're saying?
Um, Maybe not yet, but certainly
Close.
by the midpoint of the year, maybe in this or early in the second half, they would have built that line. Right now, if I were, I could be totally right. This is just speculation,
I
but right
understand.
now,
Totally get it.
what you typically do when you're building these complex devices is you have something called an NPI line, new product introduction line, and that line is has many other things added to it so you can gather more data. There's kind of think of it like something that with a lot more sensors, a lot more data gathering. It's meant to run slower, but it has the ability to produce a very good looking Optimus. It's not like there's something cruddy on that line, but it's not meant to be a high velocity line.
Right.
The first high velocity lines are usually in the second to the last stage
Okay.
of the development process typically. Some companies do it differently. But just what you want to do is you don't want this big kind of dividing line between the development. You want to kind of ease in to develop into in the ramp. You don't want it to be this just like
Right. Right.
drive off a cliff type of event and then get a bunch of surprises.
Yeah.
And when you build these first two lines that are production worthy in the development at the end of the development phase, you have all the design engineers, all the engineering team, both from the manufacturing side and the product engineering side. They're all around it. They're all looking at data. They're all looking at samples. They're validating fixtures. So my guess is the designs for those lines are wrapping up, minus some changes, I'm sure, and they're going to be ordering all the capex for those. I would probably see them at that stage. So yeah, I mean, so I'm 5 to 10,000 Optimus to me is totally doable, and what my only point to the viewers is that could just be the end of the development process that crosses over into the start of production, or Tesla could do formal start of production and just call it.
Yeah.
Sometimes what companies do as well is, and we've done this before too, is like we think we're in the pilot stage, but then we look at the pilot units and we built 5,000 of them. Like, well, these are perfect. We're going to ship them.
Right.
Like, there's
Right.
nothing wrong with them.
Right.
So that was the start of production. Let's go.
Right.
And sometimes that happens. Sometimes you're doing more of a formal data review. You find something, you're like, I'm not sure I want these to go out. But in the case of, again, these are going into Tesla. I'm not saying the bar is lower. I'm saying it's probably better for Tesla to get through this stage and get these things into Tesla factories gathering data than it is to be super formal on the sign off for production.
Yeah. Now, the other part about this is that these are because there's obviously they now know that they tend to want to be vertical, but they've already announced that they have to be vertical because nobody is making these kind of actuators. I'm assuming that they have not gone out to actuator manufacturers with their designs and asked these, some great actuator manufacturers to start making these. So there's going to, and it's not just the actuators, it would be the plastic parts of the bot itself, et cetera, maybe all being made in-house. So we have bunches of sub-assembly lines as well, right?
Well, I think to get into a little bit of the detail, I think there will be a combination. There are many actuators in the bot, some of greater complexity than others. And I think the ones of greater complexity, there'll be a bifurcation. The ones that are of more general complexity and capability, if they don't have the capacity, uh, they could be, putting those out to suppliers for manufacturing. So that the bot supply chain is under development.
I see.
And that's one of the, it's not like Tesla is doing this and they're kind of going out and putting it out to the bot supply chain to bid on. It's actually being developed real time. But I think on the component side, you're going to go through this make versus buy process, and you're going to understand, is this core or critical to intellectual property? Are these trade secrets? Well, then those typically you would try to keep on the inside, and you would do that as part of vertical. Or quite frankly, if you can just do a better job, cheaper, better, faster, you have capability that others don't have, then you would pull that into internal. But if it's something of lower complexity, not a trade secret, not an IP risk, at least two suppliers out there, by the way, then you could put that out for bidding to suppliers.
I know that when I did, yeah, I don't know, I probably told you before, I know I've said it before on my channel. I wrote an article for Inc. magazine years ago called Virtual to Vertical, because that's what I had done with my factory. And our reason for going vertical was none of the above. Our reason was quality. We just couldn't get the quality out of our suppliers. And I know Elon has mentioned that. And that's what I'm thinking about with these actuators, is that these are critical. I mean,
Yeah.
these are really important to the
Yeah.
to
So
the
the more complex ones, they may definitely
maybe.
insource
So
those. I agree.
yeah. All right. Okay. All right. So all of that is possible. I had suggested at one point that I didn't think that the entire factory would be more than 200,000 square feet to make a million of these a year. I did, just based on the total size of the bots themselves, dividing that up into the components and saying how much space would I need internally to store, to do the sub-assemblies, and then to do the primary lines. Maybe it's 250, maybe it's 300, but it's not like a million square feet or something. Like,
Well, that depends on the velocity of the line. So do you want 500 an hour or do you want 5,000 an hour? So a lot of that will be dictated by the velocity of the line, the number of stations involved, and balancing those. So yeah, I haven't thought too much through that, but line velocity is a big factor. I just want to go back to one more thing on the actuators. The world has changed. Well, I shouldn't say the world has changed. With the kind of this complex manufacturing, there are kind of like three different phases. There's the phase you just talked about, or the grouping you just talked about, of like trade secret, critical IP, want it co-located, want it by my engineers, can't get the quality on the outside. You insource it, you build it. That's a make. But in terms of the other side of it, when you outsource it to suppliers, it's not like you kind of just, here's a spec, throw it over the wall, tell me what you can do. There's this kind of tweener phase between I'm building it on the inside and I'm outsourcing it. And it's called joint development. And in that case, Tesla has this big team in their supply chain called supply or procurement team called supplier realization. And these people are literally Tesla badges, and they go out to the supply base and they represent everything Tesla. This is the way we want it. This is, these are the CPKs we want. This is the kind of tolerances we're looking for. This is the build quality we're looking for. And then they assess suppliers in terms of their capability. And then they're part of the ramp up process and the assurance of the ramp up process with the supplier. The last thing you would want, and all it takes is one supplier to fall down. And
right.
so companies invest in these supplier realization teams. Tesla absolutely has this. And that's for the kind of the stage of parts where I don't need to do it internally. I can trust it with a partner, but it's pretty complex and I want to bring it up with them. Then there's the third piece of like you bid it out to them. These are the lower complexity components. You have somebody kind of doing audits of the supplier, but you're not there every day bringing the part up with them. Those are the lower complexity parts. So there are kind of three ways to think about that. And Tesla will do all three of those.
All right. Well, that's fascinating. That was everything I was hoping you would say, but things that I didn't know you were going to say, because obviously I've never been in the position of needing to push that kind of a complex product through. All right, so my second question is maybe even more complex than my first question, and here is going to require a lot of speculation. But if I was asking the first question next Wednesday, and if Elon had 10 minutes to answer just one question, I would be asking about the overall strategic approach to batteries. Because now we're getting into all of these possible options. We have makers. We have Panasonic making certain batteries. We've got CATL making batteries. Maybe Samsung. We've got all these different companies making batteries. They're making them with different chemistries, even different form factors. Three, I guess we're up to at least three form factors at this point. Some of them are making the 4680. We've got our own internal battery manufacturing at Austin. There's 40 gigawatt hours of capacity that we bought from CATL that we've heard nothing about. We've got the potential to go to 500, according to Elon, 500 gigawatt hours at Austin, 200 at Austin, 500 at Reno, 100 in Berlin. We haven't heard about, that I know of, we haven't heard about Shanghai, but we would assume they would want to build some batteries in Shanghai. But and then you have new chemistries. I watched your show the other day with Herbert, and this competitor, EOS, is that the right name? EOS?
EOS, yeah.
They're using
zinc bromide.
Zinc bromide. So do you have any kind of a top-down thought have you been thinking about this? I think you've been thinking about it deeper than I have, about the strategic approach to the battery business? Because everything battery. It's all about batteries.
I think at the top of the pyramid for Tesla, the way they're thinking of it, they're thinking of performance, supply, and cost. And that's the top of the pyramid. And they have to optimize for that. And they can't allow them, they have a rule. They can't allow themselves for anything to bottleneck themselves to get in the way of achieving the master plan and the commitment to shareholders. So that's the way Tesla thinks. Not many companies can say that, then actually follow it up and do it. Tesla can. There are other companies like Apple who have tremendous capability, not so much, building stuff internally, but, they can get suppliers to jump just given, the, billions of dollars they spend building devices all over the world. But at the top of that pyramid for Tesla, they're considering performance, supply, and cost, and never being bottlenecked. And so down from then the strategy just filtered. And then, there's other things. I would say there's a second line of things around localization, around network optimization, so forth. And then from there, the strategy filters down. So ideally, at the core of it is they want to have car factories that are sitting on top of minerals, and battery factories connected to the car factory, sitting on top of minerals, a refining process that starts in all the materials to kind of input to build the battery, and then move it down the line into the car. That is utopia. That is, you're eliminating nodes of inventory. You're also eliminating nodes of margin that you have to pay out to people that are sub-assemblers. Every time we buy a cell today from, cattle, we've got to pay them a margin to make that cell. They have to put that cell in packaging. They have to ship it to us. We don't pay their packaging costs. They charge us a margin on the packaging. They charge us a margin on shipping it. And so when you can build everything yourself, you can knock all that out. Now the question is do you have the right utilization capability to build it at a lower total cost than they can get it to you? There are many situations in the world, there's a lot of OEMs that can't. They can't do it themselves. They can actually buy it cheaper from someone else and pay out that margin, and that result will still be better than what they can do internally.
I like to always tires. I always think of tires. It's like the last thing you would probably make yourself would be tires.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, unless they reinvent from a materials
That's
perspective, and
complete.
I wouldn't put that beyond Tesla, but yeah, you're right.
Right.
So that's what they're doing on batteries. Now, by tier of product, there are different chemistries that perform in different ways that allow them to get to different cost structures. They can get, LFP to the, 40 some dollars per kilowatt hour, and it will perform a certain way for a certain tier of vehicle. There's pros and cons to lithium iron phosphate versus the lithium ion, the nickel based batteries. And and then there's those trade-offs that they have to deal with. And so Tesla has in their master plan, they have a plan for where they want to use LFP. They have a plan for where they want to use their own battery or partners, um, and so forth. So yeah, every company has to have a strategy around energy, around batteries. And then on the storage side, this was my number one question to Tesla is just, and for not only stationary storage, but for vehicles, what is your plan for LFP supply? And kind of be specific, because we were throwing around things of like, oh, we purchased this from cattle. That's fine. That's all we know. But okay, but I mean, there could be an executive order tomorrow, putting a 200% tariff on batteries out of China, or China could proactively, if they don't like some of the other tariffs put on that are being put on silicon and wafer manufacturing equipment, lithography equipment, they may come back and say, we're going to put a proactive export control, not only on lithium iron phosphate cells, but we're going to put it on the materials,
Right.
and we're going to put it on the IP that we have.
Right.
So you can't buy the cells. We won't export them to you. We won't export the material for you to make them yourselves. And if you're using any of our IP, and we're going to go, take you to whatever, you know, court system, whatever jurisdiction, and we're going to sue you. And I think that could happen. I think that is absolutely one of the variables on the table. I do think Trump and Xi have got off to a good start, this past weekend, but that's, that we know that can change overnight. And then finally, you asked about just different like in �伊𝐽. �伊𝐽 is a different company. It's a U.S. based company based in Turtle Creek, Pennsylvania. They make a zinc bromide battery, but they do the whole thing end to end. There's no buying cells from somebody. Right now, everybody that does stationary storage in the United States is either buying lithium iron phosphate cells from China, or they're just getting started ramping with some partner in the United States, whether it's EVA, whether it's Envision AESC, of ramping their own lithium iron phosphate in the U.S. without the patent that Drew Baglino talked about. So these things are going to be higher cost and so forth. �伊𝐽 does the whole thing end to end, zinc bromide. They're greater than 90% local sourced in the United States, and it's for long duration storage. So the Tesla mega packs are for the shorter duration, higher power applications, and in the �伊𝐽's batteries for long duration storage. So call it, I think greater than 10 hours, maybe greater than 12 hours in terms of storage. Yeah, it's exciting. It's kind of a new company. They SPAC'd a couple of years ago, but they have a new product line. They have a new factory, brand new factory. Almost all the leadership is new. And they have a CEO that's kind of brought them through this whole storm, ex-GE, Joe Mastrangelo, and they're just getting ramped up. They had bankability issues, I would say, until the middle part of last year. And then they got private funding from Cerebus. They got the Department of Energy loan, which now we're hearing, all kinds of things on, but they've already gotten dispersions from it, which is good. And they're literally at the point here of like, we're bankable. Like, you can depend on us, because these are, long multi-year projects, and these customers want to make sure that, the producer they're working with is viable. So they're bankable. They have really good technology. These zinc bromide batteries have so far better round trip efficiency, and it looks like they last longer than lithium ion, just due to the cycle life requirements of lithium ion and the energy loss over time. And the big thing is the chemistry itself is not flammable. So lithium ion today, you can have something called thermal runaway.
Right.
It's, it can cause a fire.
Right.
A lot of people will point to, well, sometimes it's the surrounding electronics in the installation that causes fire. That's true. That could happen in a zinc bromide installation too. But the zinc bromide cells themselves, the batteries themselves are not, it's literally water based.
Got it.
So there's a lot of advantages. You could stack them, you could use them in more of a city environment, but they do have less energy density than lithium ion today. So, but they're constantly refining and improving. And so this thing's just getting off the ground. American company, rooting for them. I'm in it. I like it.
Okay. Okay. So one of the questions I asked Grok the other day was about hybrids. And it occurred to me that when you were talking about this with Herbert the other day, is that, okay, so you've got a 4-hour battery or a 6-hour battery or an 8-hour battery. You've got a 2-hour battery, say on Tesla's mega
Yeah.
packs, and that 2-hour battery has some benefits because it's has a higher density, energy density, but the other one has on cars, we know that, or we think anyway, that BYD might be doing some hybrid batteries, so where the battery pack itself has two different kinds of batteries in the car. I've always thought that that made a tremendous amount of sense. But then I started to think about, well, does it make sense on these, because these storage batteries are massive, and so there might be opportunity to reduce the overall cost of the battery by going into some zinc while holding on to the LFP for some portion of that in order to get the benefits of the LFP. Does that make sense? I mean, Grok
Well,
said,
you would do it. You would do it. I think the mixture you would do is for long duration and shorter duration storage for different applications.
right.
From a cost perspective, they're not at parity yet. I
I see.
mean, the EOS just started ramping, but there is a case to say fully loaded without needing all the fire suppression equipment that lithium ion would need. That over time those two could converge in volume, but today they're not. Um, and we don't know. By the way, we don't know the exact per kilowatt hour pricing. We're all guessing
Right.
on zinc bromide. It's really just an operation that's just getting started. But to answer the other answer to your question is a lot of these operators, these are big installations. This Moss Landing these are huge, and they will have multiple vendors
Mm,
on those sites most likely, and they will have different sources for different applications.
mhm, mhm.
I would imagine. So I do see that happening. I don't think they necessarily have to sell in together. These operators, these utility operators, are sophisticated enough to know what they need and to know what they're going to source. This mega data center, they're talking about this, now this Stargate project
Right.
in Texas. This thing's going to need, it's going to need battery storage. It's going to need power. It's going to need continuous power. And it's interesting. The conversation always just keeps, like, it's sexy to like just jump to nuclear. Like, these nuclear options are 5 to 7 years away. And
So
these data centers are going up now.
yeah, let me just say, I don't know the order book might require that, but Brian's an expert in this area, Brian Wang. We just did a video the other day, and they're now that the regulatory agencies get out of the way, there's about 4 or 5 US companies that are pretty darn ready to go. And even General Electric, the president or CEO of General Electric I saw his video about 6 months ago. He said, look, we're shooting for 2030 to be ramped up on
Yeah,
their
5 years.
nuclear. Yeah, I'm just saying, but that, I'm guessing part of the reason that they weren't ready to go sooner was regulatory problems. Well, now everybody seems to
Yeah,
believe that the switch kind of got flipped even before Trump came to office. Multiple places that I was resourcing and that Brian was resourcing were saying, no, the world has decided it's okay to do nukes now, and
I
not
agree
even
with that.
with Trump. And so a lot of these things might come on a lot faster. But yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of solar, a lot of nuke, and they're going to need a lot of batteries.
And that's generation, and then you're gonna need a lot of batteries
Right.
between those. So yeah,
Yeah, it's a crazy time. So as long as you made that segue for me, What do you think about this system going in Texas? Do you think it's the cat's meow, or to use a phrase that everybody watching this channel gets because they're all my age? No, kidding.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about the Texas facility?
The Stargate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. To me, this is, yeah, I love to understand, like, I think this White House administration definitely wants to put their name on all over U.S. investment, whether it's private or government. It's not clear to me right now. It feels like it's all private. It's not clear to me where the funding's coming from, but you don't need all 500 billion today. I know there's some confusion on X of like, where's the money going to come from? Well, good capital allocators aren't going to just, hoist 500 billion into an account, let it sit there and gather dust. They're going to get, batches of the money together and put it to work. So I think that's what they're doing. That's what they're kicking off. It's nice. I mean, I kind of see multiple angles of this. First off, those partners, Oracle, OpenAI, Masa-san from, and, or yeah, I just mentioned, Oracle, Microsoft, OpenAI, and Masa-san. I don't see that as necessarily the final list of partners. I
Mhm.
think over time, to build out a half a trillion, that one or more of them may leave, more may enter. It doesn't have to be four, it could be six.
Mhm.
I think that could change over time. I think what would be good for the US as well is almost having a competitor to that. So maybe there's a Stargate, maybe there's something else. America,
Moon.
American, something, yeah, America's data AI data center, and NVIDIA, of course, is a partner in that whole thing.
Sure.
And maybe it's a Bezos Musk thing, maybe it's something else, but it would be great because what would you want them to compete on? You would want them to compete on performance. You'd want them to compete on schedule, and you'd want them to compete on how many active nodes or how many active you know the active cluster size that they can get up and going. And I think having two of those go head to head would be great. I thought this was a service for the government. It doesn't.
I
It
don't.
appears like it's just we want it. We're consortium. We want an American data center so we can do medical research, military, all kinds of different things there. So that's fine. It's not clear what the government's role is. Some of these things are part vanity. Some of these things are part reality. At the end of the day, someone's got to bend metal and have the rubber hit the road and get things moving. And it's not clear to me who that general is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, let's turn to the Trump administration. I have been, I am a big fan so far after about 60 hours of I don't know, what is it? Today is Wednesday. It's only really been 48 hours or a few more. The way that they've come in and just, I mean, they're operating it like a business for real, with everything lined up and ready to go and just knocking it out. A lot of I mentioned on X the other day that I had had a lot of trouble sleeping the night before the inauguration because I had my list of what I was hoping was going to get accomplished the next day, and I kept going over it in my head. And
Yeah.
man, pretty much everything on the list got knocked out. So, what about you? How have you seen? How have you thought about the first few days, couple of days?
I think the energy's been great. I'm sure it's chaotic. A lot of these executive orders are, these are the things I'd want to see, but then there needs to be an underlying plan to put into action. Some of them are quite direct, and you see websites going offline. You
Right,
see, you
right.
know, I think the big thing I've never seen in the start of an administration is to literally stop funding almost like everything.
Yes.
Or just they picked a list of I would say many things to just stop funding. And I think that'll drive the right behavior. Stop funding and then come back with a plan in terms of have you reviewed it? Do you agree with it? And how are you going to meet, your new budget of X, Y, or Z? The only thing I would say that's starting to, kind of touch our world in tech is, they stopped a lot of the IRA, allegedly stopped disbursements for the IRA. So that battery factory cranking out. We don't know. We don't know what's actually stopped and started inside of it. There's confusing information out there. If you ask Grok or ChatGPT to analyze this, the EO and what's really stopped, some of them are saying it's everything related to EV is stopped. Some are saying other things. So, but you could assume that everything that was getting a IRA disbursement, whether it's a federal tax credit or manufacturing rebate, like for those things could be on hold. But you also have these commitments that were made. You have Department of Energy, like factories that have already been built and commissioned. For example, EOS, they're in production now in their product, and they made a deal with the government. And thing is 90% sourced in the U.S. So I mean, we don't know the exact situation. Maybe disbursements are still happening. Maybe they've decided like battery storage, like we're still if they're made in the USA and materials are coming in, like you keep doing it. So that's one part of it. I would say I'm a little bit just concerned about, 90 days, you can do a lot of damage
Yeah. Yeah.
waiting 90 days and not funding some of these things. So, but I think it's also appropriate. I think the Biden administration threw $25 billion at the big three automakers for EV conversion
Yeah.
on an equitable basis, union built. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, you need that much money to pull capex out of your factory and put new capex in? Are they even designing the right products to efficiently use that capex so that they can build a profitable product? I would say that's debatable. If I was on the other side of that in the government, I would say I don't know if these guys know if I give them $50 billion, am I going to get negative $10 billion back? Most likely.
Mhm.
And so some of it is appropriate to just stop. So there's things that have been stopped. Um, yeah, I think the attitude on the border has changed literally overnight. It looks like the number of encounters has gone down dramatically, and all those things. I think they feel like the right thing to do. Like this is what the country voted for. So yeah, so I think as it relates to clean energy, I also think a lot of people on X are just jumping to conclusions of like everything's going to be gone. We're not going to care about making batteries or EVs. No, I think the Trump administration wants to make cars and produce energy.
Mhm.
And if those energies are batteries and those cars are EVs and they're built in the United States, I think they're going to be pro that. But I'm speculating just like everyone else is. But I don't think that they're going to shut everything down. I think what they do want to shut down are things made in, Mexico and China and so forth. They want to build it here.
Yeah, I think Elon has always said that he prefers to let the capitalist system work. Let us compete, but don't give the other guy any subsidies either. Let
Yeah. Well,
let
we didn't see any of those EOs come through that, the stop subsidies to oil and gas.
right. So, but we'll see again what happens over time. But that would be, that's been the attitude of Elon all along, and that certainly. Uh, I have a friend who was slightly to the right of me, which is a little hard to believe, but we would have these arguments. He was a real purist, and he's like, "No, the government should never invest in anything. They should never be involved in anything that." And I'm like, "Okay, but there's times like with solar energy, where it was never going to happen if the government did get involved in the early stages because there just wasn't enough capital to get it off the ground, or it would have taken 50 years or something." So anyway, we had that back and forth, and I wasn't convincing him, and he wasn't convincing me. But I think solar energy and battery manufacturing, electric car manufacturing, it's mature now. Um, let it let it rip. Let's see what the people want. Which I mean,
Yeah. And have builders behind these decisions too. I don't know if there was any builders in the White House in the prior generation. I
yeah,
know I may be oversimplifying it, but were there any people that, were titans of industry, inside of and making these decisions? I think this is how you get a CHIPS Act where you're fabbing wafers in Arizona and then they have to go to Taiwan or Singapore or Korea for packaging and test. And then they go then to some other point in Asia for integration into a product. That's not helping anybody. That's not giving anybody any geographical security. That's not helping. That's hurting cost. You've actually extended the span of the supply chain. You've put more nodes in logistics. Like you've actually those chips are going to be more expensive. So if you're doing the CHIPS Act the right way, if they had a builder behind it, they would have had the whole solution thought through and launched reasonably close to each other. So you'd have wafer fab packaging, and then you'd have several integrators in the United States. Maybe it's the iPad line for Apple. Maybe it's the whatever. Like they each manufacturer brings back one major product line. Maybe it's not their highest volume line, but it's something that they can build in the US. So now you've got chips coming off the line in Arizona, packaging in Arizona, and then they go boom, they go right to a factory, whether it's in Texas or Tennessee or even in Arizona, but everything's kind of, geographically in the United States. Then you have security. Then you have a shot at cost too, and doing things, at a good cost structure. But the way that, yeah. So I'm glad to see that there are builders behind some of this. I'm sure we're going to see things we don't like. I am disappointed that, it looks like we're not going to see any of the subsidies stop on oil and gas. In fact, we may see, lighter fluid poured on it, proverbially.
Well, we'll see. So the key to me on all of the decisions made by the government, even when I was having this debate with my friend, is the only things that I'd be interested in the government ever getting invested in would be things that are strategic. And that can be economically strategic, or it can be militarily strategic. But it does appear that this administration sees it that way. I will give credit to the previous administration, which I'm loath to do. But I believe that whoever was pulling the strings in that administration did see that the chips were a strategic issue. They did see that manufacturing in the United States was a strategic issue. So give them props for that. But I think this administration sees that energy is number one in terms of being strategically the most powerful country in the world by a lot, and we have the resources to do it. So why not?
We get our costs down.
It's certainly China doesn't have the natural resources to be able to compete with us. So that's an exciting part to me. One last thought today is Edmunds named the Model 3 best car on the planet today. Talked about all the improvements that went into the Model 3 and how when they tested it, they were just like blown away about how good this car is compared to any other vehicle that they've tested. That I've been shocked that the Model 3 hasn't sold more. The Model Y now gets those improvements in China first, and maybe rolling out everybody at once. I've asked every one of my co-hosts the same question. Do you think that the Model Y improvements will increase the sales? Forgetting what happens with FSD and, unsupervised and robotaxi, just on a same for same basis, will the Model Y sales increase now that we have these amazing improvements?
Well, to technically answer your question, I think the rate by region will not, sorry, where we're selling Model Ys today, I think we'll continue to sell them at a good clip. I don't think it's going to necessarily grow higher, but it could for sure. But where it is going to go higher is when we start entering places that we haven't been before. And we're still doing that in EV. We're still doing that at Tesla. The number of countries, like the penetration's very low on EV and on Tesla. So by that definition, it's going to continue to expand for a long time. What would not say put the brakes on it, but if you told me that that's all we're building until the Cybercab, I would have said even more likely that it's going to grow sales. But I think these vehicles that are going to be below the 3 and Y will
Cannibalize.
soak up a lot. So you'll have more total car shipments out of Tesla, but it may, I'm going to say it's going to stall Model Y. I think Model Y will grow as it goes into new areas and regions. I think that's where the growth is going to come from. Primarily, I'm not saying you won't have growth in Chicago, LA, or so forth, but I think the upgrade's a worthy upgrade. I think they focused on things related to comfort, road noise, cost, and also aesthetics. And I think it's a worthy upgrade. I've always thought Model 3 refresh was kind of underestimated. I mean, there could be an awareness issue, who knows? But I think pound for pound, it's the best EV made, and a lot of people, agree with that. And it's great to see Model Y, being upgraded now. I think they're going to launch it in the U.S. for orders tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay. All right. We'll notch that
Just
down.
a guess.
I gotcha. Just a guess. Do you have some inside information there?
No, I
Okay.
have no inside information.
Okay. So the guess is tomorrow. All right. Well, so all right. So just for giggles, how do you see Tesla stock? We have all these impacts coming from all the different ways. We got the earnings report next week. We've got Elon with the Heil Hitler salute, which is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. We don't want to really spend any time on that. We already have. We've got the impact of the new Trump administration and what's going to happen with EV credits. We've all these different things that are happening all at once with regard to the impact of the stock, but it's kind of hanging out at 415, 420, 425. What do you think happens between now and the end of the month?
Well, there's no reason, if you think logically, as long as Tesla beats on the EPS side, or even meets or beats, and the guidance is good, Elon, from the last 90 days to now, October, whatever, 24th or 21st, whatever it was, to now, his candidate was elected, and a lot of improvements have occurred in his products, his software, FSD, everything. So a lot of market earnings reaction depends on Elon. When Elon is gloomy, the stock is gloomy. When Elon is mad, the stock gets mad. When Elon's in a good mood, the stock is in a good mood. So it's obviously going to depend on them beating earnings. It's going to really depend on what is the tone that sets. Is the tone that he's setting, and they also have to kind of affirm that these new vehicles are roughly on time. If there's nothing new like that, or like any kind of new gotchas, and the new stuff's on time, Musk is in a good mood. I think it moves, meaningfully higher. Do you take out the previous old high? I think it's possible. But I'm not someone who just does, day by day, week by week,
Right.
even stock predictions. But Tesla technically, it broke out and it re-rated, and it looks like it's technically ready to do something again. But, the fundamentals have to line up to, and finally, just on that note, I always like to put these things into perspective because we have a 24-hour, every minute news cycle, and everybody wants to just hyperventilate on executive order, $7,500 credit, and blah, blah, blah. $7,500 credit in one region that Tesla sells cars in means nothing compared to the autonomy opportunity and the humanoid opportunity, which look like they're within 1 calendar year of not only being in production, but actually having sellable revenue coming in.
Yeah.
And that's usually the window that analysts are looking at in terms of now, are they putting the right assumptions in for all these? Probably not. Is everybody being overly bullish? Some are, some aren't. But the point is like we're now within, if you're talking about a 12-month price target,
Yeah.
we're now in a 12-month window where you'll have cars driving without a driver in the driver's seat, and you'll have robots building stuff in factories in the thousands. So those are two independent waves that are now all of a sudden moving close together. The market likes to run these waves. I could think that this first run up was the Elon Trump,
Yeah.
no more, this hangover, this lawfare hangover. That could have been most of that wave. Also, part of it could have been this, easing of an autonomy framework. But we could be approaching two more waves of, where the market's got a front run and get ahead of, like, are there going to be many, is Tesla on literally week number 1 going to supersede the size of the Waymo Cruise network? It's possible. That's a big headline.
Yeah.
And then will Tesla factories have many thousands of Optimus building product? That's a big headline. That opens up the world of possibilities to no end. So I'd be careful if you're trying to get cute with a stock. That's all I would say. I don't give any kind of investment advice, but
That's great.
and jumping in and out of this thing, you're just
Yeah.
You don't know what could happen.
Yeah, we had made a decision that we were as far in as we were going to get, that we're because we're old. And so we have a portion of our portfolio is in Tesla. And the rest is in boring stuff. And but actually made the decision yesterday that we're going to put some more in. So yeah, I think this is going to be a monumental year on so many levels, not just Tesla, but also from the standpoint of our government getting its act back together again. What a time to be alive.
The golden age has begun.
The golden age. That's right. It has begun. As always, Jeff, I appreciate you being on. We will let you go before we run the numbers, but we will look forward to next Wednesday. I don't know. It's earnings day. You may not be able to join us because sometimes you're tied
Yeah,
up with
we'll
the.
figure out. Maybe it's a different time or something. We'll figure something
Okay.
out.
All right. Thanks again for being on.
Thanks. Now, I'm not going to salute you. I'll just do this normal salute.
Thanks so much. All right, so let's go on to those numbers. And of course, as you well know today, the equities did very nicely, up 130 for the Dow and 252 for Nasdaq. S&P up 37. All the Magnificent Seven were up, most of them strongly. All of the Kathy Woods were up. It was a great day for everybody, but Tesla, unsurprisingly, not unsurprisingly, but there's a lot of stuff, as we just talked about, that's impacting the thinking, the mood around Tesla right now, and it's a mixed bag. But as I mentioned on X earlier today, I think very few of us, very few of you, probably thought we'd be at 410, 415, 420 at this point. Even 6 months ago, I was saying we'd be at 410 by the end of next week, but I was pretty alone. It was a lonely place to be, thinking we'd be at 410 after the earnings call. So anyway, the Tesla stock down 8.96 for the day, is up 87 cents in the after hours, and all of those Magnificent Seven stocks that were up so much during the day are actually down a little bit in the after hours. I did check that. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the bonds, because as you know, that's where I'm so concerned that these bonds get down. I would love to see it under 4, believe me. I mean, I know at 4.6, it seems like it'll take forever to get under 4, but certain things can happen over the next couple of weeks in terms of the Trump administration, the things they're saying and the things they're executing on, that could drop the bonds like a rock. You can see a bond rally that would just be crazy. You've seen it before. When I, by the way, got it right when the bonds were at 5%, and I said that was it. They couldn't go any higher, and that there was a bond rally coming. We got the bond rally, and it dropped all the way down, I think, to 3.6. So for us to go from 4.6 at this point back down to 3.6, I don't think it's that hard to get if the bond market believes that the Trump administration is going to do what it says it's going to do. All right, so we got 10-year is up 0.8 of a basis point in the pre-market at 4.607%. We've got the 2-year basically unchanged, and the 1 month is up also 1.2 basis points in the pre-market. Okay, let's go ahead to oil. Oil down a little tiny bit more, 21 cents, $75.23. I think what you're going to see here is just my thinking based on watching what's going on. I don't think there's any way oil can hang in the plus $70 category. I think we'll be back down into the 60s fairly soon. Maybe within a week or two, we'll be down in the 60s again. And then I think we'll be in the 50s. Might take a month, might take 6 weeks, but I think we'll be looking at maybe 59, 60, $61 a barrel. We've got natural gas. So I just gave you, okay, and Brent is at 79, but then it hasn't started trading yet. So right now it's almost $4 higher, which is unusual. Natural gas is exactly $4 on the nose. So it is showing some inclination to go back up again. with all this cold weather. Maybe they're going to sell a lot more heating in Texas and Florida. What do you think? We've got gold down 740. So it's all-time high at 2770, I guess. 2771 would have been the all-time high today, but now it's come down $7.70 off of that at 2763. Silver down 0.33 at $31.31. And that is kind of in the range it's been recently. Copper also kind of almost exactly where it's been, $4 and almost 30 cents, down a little in the pre-market. Dollars flat, kind of hanging out, wanting to see what the tariffs are really going to be. There's not, okay, I'm going to make another prediction. Not a single tariff will be raised on February 1. There won't be any 25 tariff rates for Mexico or Canada. There won't be any tariffs raised in Mexico or Canada on February 1. May not be any tariffs raised in Canada or Mexico 6 months from now. There will not be a 10% increase in China on February 1. These are my predictions. You can bookmark it. We'll come back. We can talk about it. I don't think there's going to be any increases in any tariffs right now. Yes, there's going to be increases in tariffs, and they might be 10% in China, but they won't be right now because he needs to sit down and talk to Xi and see what the entire picture looks like. It's going to take a minute. All right. We've got, let's see. We've got Bitcoin down 2,800 at 103.6. Okay, so that might be one for Nicholas. I think it was going to go under 100 again. We'll see what happens there. And we've got equities down, but barely. So you got Dow's down 9.02%, S&P down 3.50 or 0.06%, NASDAQ down 29.50 or 0.13%. So it's not surprising after 2 days. Today's Wednesday. So after 2 really strong up days, not surprising at all to see taking a little breath here. But the earnings have all been good, solid earnings. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about earnings tomorrow morning. Okay, let me also let you know that I've got Brian Wang coming on here at 7:45, and Brian and I have already talked about the list of subject matter. Oh my goodness, do not miss Brian Wang tonight. We are going to talk about the technical aspects of where the Tesla stock is right now. We'll talk about some fundamentals too, but he has got a list of things that he wants to talk about with regard to, well, all the kinds of things that you want to know. And Brian is the futurist. And again, I'm extremely impressed with the subject list that he has for that show. So come on back tonight, hit notify if you want to remember that. You can't do notify. You may not know this, but you cannot hit notify unless you're subscribed. So then you would subscribe because that would be good. That's good for the channel. It's good for me. And then, you could hit the like button while you're playing around with all those buttons anyway. You could hit the like button. And then, if you got any time left over after all that, drop down and sign up for Patreon. $3 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month. It would be a nice help. All right. That's all I got for you right now. It has been great. Oh, yes. Last night I had Brian White on. So I'll put that card up. That's the card I'll put up is Brian White's card. He gave the 10 things, his 10 questions he'd like to ask Elon Musk a week from today, a little while ago. Anyway, thanks. It's been great talking to you.